welcome back to Japan, where I'm going to be giving my final thoughts and review of BabyMetal's Metal Galaxy album. And I'm hoping you've all heard it by now. It's the long-awaited release from the band, their third full album, and it's one that I've been doing a track-by-track review of. If you didn't know, you can check out the playlist in the description below. This is the last video in that list, though, because this is where I'm going to give my final thoughts and talk about what the best and worst points of the album are, how effective it is, and how it works in their, if you like, chronology. Now, this is an album that I think it's fair to say a lot of people have been waiting a long time for, and we on this channel already have our BabyMetal top 10 songs list. That will be updated, maybe extended to a top 15 to include extra songs from this album as I feel are appropriate, and we're going to be using that same advanced technical scoring system to make sure I'm not being too biased, but just a little bit biased, because it's all about taste after all. Anyway, I've got notes for this. There's so much to unpack on this album that I've actually brought some notes and written them down. So what we're going to talk about here, well, first of all, we need to talk about the challenges that are facing the band going into this. And I think this is an important thing to look at. I know, as could be pointed out by detractors, this is a group who don't write their own songs. So when I'm talking about the whole thing, I'm talking about BabyMetal as their entire creative team. Everyone goes into making this because they seem to work as a bit of a family, a bit of a unit for the best part. Now, the biggest challenge with this, as far as I'm concerned, is because of the fact that they had to maintain a sense of being fun and unique with also the creative integrity. I mean, look at the first two albums, look at where they started off. They started off as crossing over from the Sakura Gakuin girl group, and they were basically just a pop group who did metal-y songs, and so they had a bit of leeway there. They were new, they were fresh, they could experiment, and they could get people interested that way just by being a different take for pop fans on something heavier, and a different take for metal fans. Hey, this is someone approaching our beloved genre in a different way. Now, I'm a bit of a fan of many genres. I wouldn't call myself a particular metalhead or a pop fan, whatever the name for that is. I'm just a fan of most genres. So for me, it's just an interesting crossover to hear these two things done so well together, and look at the number of groups who copied them. But then on their second album, they really tried to, I think, find themselves a proper fan base with metal fans by doing something that would really sort of show that they had integrity, and they did an amazing album, which I think was better than anyone could have expected. If you'd heard what their intention for this album presumably was going into that second album, to imagine it would have come off that effectively with songs that were that tight and that well written is amazing. So where do you go on a third album? You can't really write yourselves into something better, and as I've said in previous videos on this playlist, the only way they could really do was to go for something different, and in that case go for different sounds. They weren't going to outright themselves on the previous album, so why not do something a bit experimental sonically, add new sounds to the album, which has given us songs like Shanty Shanty and various things like that, where they've played around with those aspects. So for me, I really like that. Now, this is the problem, is people's expectations. I think if you were someone who really got into them for being a pure metal band who really have managed to be a girl band but encapsulate metal so well, this album is probably going to abandon you a little bit, and I understand some people have felt a little bit abandoned by some of the directions this has gone in, and I think that led to some of the featurettes they chose. Now, I will get onto the featurettes in just a second, but I would say that it's always going to happen. I think it's a good thing when groups actually don't just keep on releasing the same album because they know that works, because they always get the laws of diminishing returns. I think it's better when a group goes in different directions and tries to do different things with their upcoming albums, even though you're always going to lose some people to a certain degree. Now, one of the things that I didn't expect, like I say, my expectation, I just wanted to hear something different but was impressive, that was as much of an effort to do something new as it was experimental, and as it was effective. And I think they've kind of gone a long way towards doing that. But the featurettes was something I didn't expect, the feature vocals. And I just say, before I get into talking about the tracks in more detail, my favourite thing about the featurettes is that, with exception to Papaya, and I'm probably the only person who really liked that rap bridge, with exception to Papaya, I almost couldn't notice any of the featurettes. I know there are featurettes on a lot of the songs. Some of them are by instrumental members, which is fair enough, but they've already got Kami Gap Band, who are fantastic musicians, so it's not like anything there couldn't have been done by someone else. Sorry, I've got two pet dogs in the other room, and they appear to be fighting. One moment. Would you two shut up, please? Stop fighting. Where was I? Yes, with exception to the Papaya verse that I really liked from F-Hero, I think you pretty much couldn't tell any of the other featurettes, and the main reason for that was because, you had sort of growling metal vocals like on Oh Maginai, but they seem to employ growling metal vocal guest vocalists who aren't credited quite a lot of the time anyway. There was apparently an extra singer on Distortion, but if I'm honest with you, nothing really stood out to me there. I pretty much, if there was, it was something that they could have done without a backing singer. There was nothing that sort of changed the songs into the direction of another vocalist, in my opinion. So the featurettes were pretty much fine, because they slipped under the radar as far as we're concerned. Now, looking at the songs on the album, we start off with Future Metal, which, like I said before, I think is a bit of a lackluster intro to us. It doesn't really do anything to hype you up particularly, it's just kind of there. It's relatively in keeping with what you expect from the album, but it doesn't really show off the best or doesn't really blow you away, so fair enough. Then Da Da Da, like I said, I really like that song. I think that's a great song to put in there. It's really full on. It's written in a very Japanese pop style, in my opinion. I maintain that point, especially with the key change chorus and everything. But again, it's kind of a strange thing to have front and centre. It doesn't really grab you because it's very full on. It's one that with more and more listens of the album, it becomes kind of enjoyable, but it's not, like I say, nothing at this point grabs you until we go into Elevator Girl, which I think in the progression of an album is the first time that you get something where you go, that's a wow song. I know it's split a lot of people, but I really loved that as a single. I think it's super catchy. I know it's a bit out there for their usual style, but I think it's brilliant. At least the Japanese version, I'm absolutely in love with that. So that's great. But then Shanty Shanty Shanty, however many shanties it is, it's 3 shanties, isn't it? I've got to admit, that song's grown on me more and more and more, and it's difficult to say at the moment, but I think that might be my favourite song from the album at the moment. We'll see how it comes when I get to the updated top 10, but certainly the more I've been listening to that, it's really been settling in with me the last few days, certainly. And at this point, the album has so much energy. Like I say, that weird little start, I mean, Da Da Dance is such a brilliant song, but that weird little start's all starting to pay off now and you're really feeling like you're getting into it. But then we have Oh Maginai, and like I say, I gave that a kind of lukewarm review before, but I got to admit, the more I listen to it, I hate to say it, I think it's now becoming, on multiple listens, the first Baby Metal song that I can genuinely say, I don't like it. I just don't like it. It's gone from being a bit quirky, but with time, the quirkiness and the fun has lost its appeal, and that annoyingness of it has just sort of drummed in. And I've got to admit, now it's one of those songs, I always try to listen to the album properly, all the way through when I did my multiple listens before doing a final full. It just became the one where I couldn't wait for it to finish, and that's a really terrible thing to be able to say. It's partly harmful that it comes after a song that's quite as catchy as Shanty Shanty Shanty, but like I say, it's written like they think it's really catchy, but it's not. It's just genuinely annoying. And I actually wrote down 2 notes. There's a point both at 1 minute 35 and 2 minutes 12 where the song could have stopped, and if it had stopped at those points, it would have just been a quirky little thing on the album. But at the expansive length that it was, and finishing on just that nauseating last chorus, I'm sorry, I know that apparently she really likes this song, but I'm going to call her out as wrong. How many dislikes am I going to get for saying that? I'm sorry, the song is the worst thing on the album, and I think it's one of the worst songs they've ever released. Well, it's got to be the worst song they've ever released, because it's the only one I can genuinely say, if someone put it on, I would ask them to make it stop. This is a band who I really like, and that's gone from the first time I heard it, it was quirky, now I'm just really sick of it. So, as an album track, and album tracks are those ones that at least are worse, they've got to be ones that you just stop paying attention to. As an album track, that's a really bad thing, I'm sorry. Then we enter what I would consider, I know this is all part of that first half, that first disc, but we enter what I've kind of written a note next to it saying it's kind of like the Head Sway trilogy. We've had a lot of head banging at the beginning of this album, but then we go into 3 songs, Brand New Day, BBAB, and Night Night Burn, that are, they have headbanging elements like all these songs do, but they're more ones that you can sort of bob and sway to. They have a slightly slower tempo and more of a concentration on a little bit more of a funky approach, I'd say. Certainly Night Night Burn, which has got those sort of Latin rhythms infused into it. Now Brand New Day is brilliant because it's sort of like a soothing recovery. It resets you so much after Oh Maginai, and considering the way I've been feeling about Oh Maginai, certainly after more listens, maybe that's been increasing my opinion of Brand New Day, but I've been liking Brand New Day more and more and more. the more I listen to it. And it's certainly the melodic qualities are really there, and it's got that nice little sort of broken up production that's been growing on me. BBAB, I loved it straight from the first time I've heard it. Yes, I don't think too much of the way it's mixed. I think it's very muddy in the mix, but it is still, it's got a great melody, it's got a great tempo. It's one I really look forward to every time it came round to. Probably my favourite chorus on the album, just as a sort of pure melodic chorus. And in Night Night Burn, like I say, and that bridge on Night Night Burn, the sort of crazy Latin bridge, is brilliant and so experimental. So this first half of the album, with exception to, like I say, me going off O Imaginary really badly, the album has a lot of experimentation. I mean, the most important thing, it has loads of sounds. And this is what we're saying. Going into this album, they needed to play with sound. They needed to do something that had a different approach from what they'd done previously. It's not to say they hadn't experimented with different sounds before, but they really go for it on this point. And it is a fantastic fusion of metal and sort of sounds that you wouldn't maybe normally hear in metal. Now that moves us on to the second disc, which starts with In the Name, which, like I say, that's more of a good intro than Future Metal, because unlike Future Metal, what In the Name does, I mean, both of them equally, you wouldn't really take them on their terms as being a song. They are basically intros. But I think In the Name really sets you up into the mood of what you're going to get. It gives you a good indication of what's coming afterwards, and it does it in a big sort of impressive way that you feel actually kind of hyped for the second half of the album. And I must admit, the second half of the album was the one that I was less excited for, because I'd been sort of indicated to me that this is where it kind of goes to them just sort of being baby metal in more of a straight shooting way. So it's the one where I'm expecting less experimentation, and I think that In the Name does a good job of hyping you up, which is great, because afterwards you've got Distortion. As we said, I've checked that out a couple of times, the album version of the single, and basically that's a really great sort of rock song metal song, straight shooting, but it's good at what it does. And then Papaya is a real highlight on this album. I'm really happy that more people have fallen in love with it. I'm a bit sad that so many people are still anti to the rap bridge, but then a lot of people have been won over by it as well. I think that bridge is fantastic. I think it's really in keeping with the song. I've heard some of F Hero's other stuff, and I've got to admit, I don't really like it so much, but I think he really nailed the feel of that song. I think he got the rhythm right, he delivered it well, he delivered it with the right energy, the right power. I just think that adds something to the song and makes it stand out. So Papaya would have been a good song anyway, but I think that bridge makes it stand out. I just really love that for all it is, and I love that it's got that bridge in it, which throws us into BXMXC, which is the kind of like the hip hop, doesn't really have a chorus thing, but again, for me this was a real killer track. I absolutely adored it, and I'm so happy to hear something kind of out there like this on the second half of the album. Yeah, it's metal. The more experimentation is that it's done in this sort of rap written way, but still brilliant. I loved it. It's, how to put this, it's kind of, whether you like it or not as being a baby metal song, whether you like the fact that it isn't very melodic or not, it works brilliantly. You've got to admit, it works brilliantly on the album because it's effective for giving variation. It really stands out in its place. And Kagero coming straight after that, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, Kagero, it's a nicer change of tone. It goes into much more of an old school, like hard rock almost, as much as metal feel, which again gives variation. So when they get into this heavier part of the album, they're still maintaining a sense of variation between all of the songs. And Kagero, again, that one's another one that really grew on me because of the fact that it's sort of refreshingly, after all the experimentation, it's refreshingly straight shooting. It almost becomes a hard rock song. Then you've got Starlight, everything gets big and beautiful and slows down. Same thing with Shine. I've heard a lot of people really like that song. It's a good one that I wouldn't say necessarily stands out for me, but it certainly has that place of giving the album its probably its slowest and most delicate and its most thoughtful piece, and it does that well. And then Arcadia, as I said before in the review of that, it's a nice final explosion, really blasts out at the end of the album and gives you a good way of rounding things up. So how do we really look at this album in total, considering those are my thoughts about the individual songs? I mean, as two albums, as two separate albums, I think that first part, going for an experimentation, is a brilliant job. I think it's really nice. I really like that. I know a lot of people felt that was kind of alienating. I think certainly the latter singles from the album all came from that half. That, I don't know whether they sort of started off in more of a straight metal way and then sort of curved to doing this slightly different style, more, I'd say pop metal, but using more pop sounds, less heavy metal guitars and stuff. But that first half of the album, as its own disc, is brilliant. And the second half, okay, they're going for something more straight metal, and of course, as a total product, it's never going to be quite as impressive as Metal Resistance was, but it holds up on its own as a collection of what 8 tracks, one being an intro. It holds up very well, and so when you put that all together as one album, you do get two very distinct and identifiable halves. You get a feeling that everything has purpose, there's variation, there's a journey. It goes from one place to another and it takes you with it. The whole arrangement of the album's really nice. There are some points, like I say, I think that I don't think Oh Imagine I would have worked anywhere in the album. It's just too irritating. I do think the first half, putting future metal there wasn't a very good intro. Like I said, it's not bad, it just wasn't good enough. And I'm surprised that Da Da Dance was at the beginning, but you know, with that said, other than that slightly rocky start, and I say rocky not in a heavy way, but just in a way, you know, there's quality shines through, and it does. Most of it flows really well. The second half flows brilliantly, and it's just, you know, it's great in that sense. I mean, one of the interesting things is that they've got all the usual cuteness of BabyMetal, but there's a sort of little sense of swagger in this album. It's more confident, and that confidence carries it. I mean, right down to the way the vocal performances are done, right down to the choice of the songs. This album has a little bit more swagger to it, which is kind of nice. You can hear them growing up, but one of the things that I really have to mention is that it's that whole thing about them mixing being fun and maintaining integrity. Because obviously the whole thing that got them famous, and you know, they are called BabyMetal. You know, you think about that. It's the combination of that sort of cute innocentness and the slightly, oh, I can't believe these cute girls are doing metal. Now they've grown up, of course, with doing metal with integrity. Have they maintained that? Yeah, I think so. When they want to, they pull out songs that have like a real interesting metal area. All of the songs have little flares that show that the writing is still top quality. They're not just dialing in poppy songs. And you know, the fun elements, you know, especially the lyrics, give it that sort of fun element. You look at the lyrics for Papaya, you look at the BBAB, up, down, left, right, BBAB, you look at the lyrics for that. There is a sense that they're still doing those songs that other bands couldn't do. They're writing about things that metal bands couldn't normally do. So they're maintaining that balance. And, you know, I think that that's something we'll really have to take into consideration. Now, yes, I know that the production elements of this album were not brilliant. At times it works brilliantly. I mean, on songs like Shanty Shanty, the ideas were there. But then I think the production was actually probably really good. I think the problem was the mixing and the mastering, where things got a bit muddy, things got a bit compressed, they lost that clarity. I mean, even in the sort of kick drum sections, it doesn't have much kick, it doesn't feel like it really punches through. So, you know, it's an album that does have its problems. It's not perfect, let's put it that way. However, let's just hold it up. I mean, I've written a note here basically saying just sort of to think about comparison against their own other albums and against, you know, general albums. And that's the difficult thing. If you compare it against their own albums, I can see why some people would say, well, okay, it's not got quite the rock mastery of Metal Resistance. It never gets quite to those pinnacles of being out there and, if you like, detailed metal writing. Okay, maybe not. Maybe you wouldn't find it as fun as things like Doki Doki Morning and, you know, some of their earlier works. Maybe it doesn't quite pinnacle any of their particular areas, but it does manage to bring a lot of them together in a way that really works as a tight package. However, we still have to say, look at this in 2019, you know, the year that we're in, which is soon to end. Compare that to what anyone else is releasing, and you still have to say this album is a refreshing change. Even if you are a BabyMetal fan who doesn't consider this to be up alongside their best work, it is so refreshingly better than a lot of the other things that are coming out. And I say that as someone who, one of my main concerns when I listen to metal is usually that a lot of it just sounds the same because it's so desperate to prove that it's metal. And I think that they've maintained their most important quality, which is the refreshing ability to not have to pander too much to the genre. They embrace the genre, but they don't pander to it. And I think that's really the main thing that I would get out of this. So, where does this album belong? I would say that it's a very good addition to their repertoire, portfolio. I always find it difficult to think of the perfect word to describe that. But it's a really good addition to that. I do think it moves them forwards. I don't think they're just sort of turning around what they've done. They've managed to embrace certain aspects of what they've done before, but they are moving forwards. Like I said, they're getting a little bit more of a confidence in their sound. You know, they are still experimenting with things they've never done before and making it work, as I've got to say again, Shanty proves. There is just a lot of things to, I think, if you're a fan of the band, to feel very relieved about with this. I don't think it's a letdown. I think it's a real move forwards. I think this shows that they've got a lot in their future, and luckily because of the way they're set up, they've got a big enough team of people that they can always find a way to move forwards in the future, and I'm interested in seeing where they go. Like I say, the first album was kind of a given, it was a breakout. The second one, they honed a sound to get them more respect. The third album, they've tried to sort of go into new territories and experiment with new things. So where will the next album go? Who knows? I mean, they might have a new member by then. It'd be really interesting to see what they're experimenting with next, but I must say that as far as I'm concerned, this certainly at least caps a trilogy of albums that are different, refreshing compared to the rest of the music scene, and, you know, are slewed with quality. So my final conclusion, definitely this album is worth getting. If you're interested in metal, or if you're just interested in the fusion of different sounds at all, definitely get it. They never dropped the ball once on this. With it. Like I say, Imagine I keep on slagging that off now in this particular review, but, you know, like I say, I know a lot of people like that. Just from my own opinion, I think it's just not good enough. But, you know, I've got a skip button, and I'll be using it in future, I'm afraid, on that one, I think. It's this album, though, the only real areas where it drops the ball a bit are on production, and I hope they do what they do with some of the sort of smaller budget albums where a version comes out a few years later where they've given it to someone else to remaster it. I hope someone does that, because I think this album has so much life that's maybe being lost under compression. So yeah, great stuff, really enjoyed it, and I'm really infused to look forward to more. I joined the band very late in the day with you guys in the comments, so as always, get in the comments and tell me more, but certainly I'm feeling very relieved that this shows that the band are on a upward trajectory and doing all the right things. So as always, get in the comments, tell me what you think. If you really like what we do, then you can go onto our other social medias that are also in the description below. There's lots of links there. If you want to give me suggestions for things to listen to and video links, the best place to do that is our Reddit. If you want to get involved in the conversation, the best place is our Discord. Obviously, we've got the comments below. I read them all, even if I don't get time to reply to them all, so that's a great place just to give us some quick thoughts and things. Definitely like and subscribe if you want to see a bit more, and our Facebook and Twitter are there if you just want to stay up with things. But now I've given my full rant. I think I've said everything I can about this album. We've been waiting for a long time, and the next thing I'll be doing is updating the top 10, possibly to the top 15 BabyMetal songs. So join me for that. That'll be coming out in the next few weeks, maybe a month from now. But either way, thank you so much for tuning in, and for now, from Japan, with Metal Galaxy, ciao ciao.